Hey, what's up guys, it is Psycho Sam here and welcome back to the channel. And today guys, we're gonna spice this up a little bit and I'm gonna make a video you guys have been requesting me for a while now. You know, the Book of the Dead was released by Unity and a lot of people started asking me if I could make a reaction video to it or maybe like a review. And since you guys like my level designs, you wanted my input on the level designing aspect, the environment, the graphics, post-processing and all that. And I decided it would be a cool idea, and I'm feeling a little bit ill today. I'm getting kind of sick, so I decided it would be a cool short video to record as well. So I was like, why not? So here we are guys, without further ado, we're gonna watch this together, we're gonna react to it, and I'm gonna review it. And most importantly, I want to hear what you guys have to say, your inputs in the comment section down below. So I'll see you guys there when we end the video. Alright, so I just want to give a short little break here. You can, like, to acknowledge the fact that this scene, this shot looks incredibly realistic, you don't really have to look far back in the scene. And this is something that I see a lot of level designers do. Like, they can't really play around with the ground, they can't really play around with like the close by effects and the objects that are close to the main camera, so they just go far back into the scene. Here Unity obviously makes it realistic by focusing a lot on the ground, focusing a lot on the objects that are near you, and perhaps the background might be even an effect or a 3D model that they just added. Like, it looks like a branch kind of wall, or like a, you know, a wall that a castles would have. I mean, it could be a 3D model, but that doesn't really matter. What really matters is the fact that if you look at the ground here, you can even see small pebbles sticking up. And that's something that props should be given to for Unity. Because I've seen so many indie devs making their games, making their level design, and asking me how it looks, and the ground is just plain flat. Like, there is no buckles, there's no grass that is sticking up from the ground, or even if there is grass, it's just either too much or too little. And here you can see that there are pebbles sticking up, and pebbles aren't just these huge rocks. Pebbles are these small, tiny little rocks. You can really see if you just zoom in on this picture, or if you just look really carefully, which I do from a level designer's perspective. And you can also see from the ice, you know, the reflections, they are very high quality. And it's just the typical plain ice texture you would find off of Google and implement to Unity scene. You literally see all the cracks on the ice. You see a little bit of white, you see a little bit of gray, you see a little bit of transparency between the ground and the ice, which makes it look realistic. And then you see reflections and all that. And also grass, obviously, once again, I just want to have an input on that. You see a little bit of grass sticking up from the ground. And here, a special part, some of the grass is taller, some of the grass is, you know, a lot shorter. Some of the grass is almost ground level, like smaller than most rocks. And that's what's really adding the realism effect to the scene, or the shot at least, in my opinion, because it looks and feels real. Because you know that the real world outside looks like this. The real world doesn't look like a plain flat ground all the way in a forest, in a dense forest like this. It looks like a little bit, you know, played around, because some humans walk around these some paths, and on those paths the grass doesn't, you know, grow up, etc. And the ground doesn't really become subtle or like standard. It becomes a little bit more played with. I guess I really like to call it played with, but what I'm trying to say is that it's not the same wherever you look in the scene. Everything on the ground has a different kind of effect to you, and it makes you feel like something happened on these grounds before.
Look at that. I didn't think you had it in you.
Alright, so this is probably one of my favorite scenes. This is a very small scene. The character is just looking literally at the ground. There's not too much to analyze here in that kind of sense, but you can see the pebbles once again, and they have put quite a lot of resources, or at least focus onto the pebbles, because you can see not only just like really huge rocks or pebbles sticking up from the ground. It's obvious that these pebbles here, I'm trying to show it with my mouse, but these pebbles here are kind of hidden under the ground. Like, you can just see them sticking up just a little tiny bit, and you can see these ones are very obvious to see. And it almost looks like if this was a regular terrain that they created in Unity, they just like make a little gap here, like in between the tree or the terrain, and they just make it lower, and then they place a few rocks, a few pebbles that they focus quite a lot on to make a realistic texture for. And then here they just have a regular terrain formation or terrain height, and they just place the same kind of pebble here and then put a little bit less focus onto, but fill it up with grass, and that makes it look so realistic. And also, speaking of grass, we gotta have an input on the wind effect here. I don't know if you guys realize all the wind effect, but I don't know if this is like the exact wind effect you get from a regular terrain. When you add a terrain into Unity and you add your grass and paint the grass, you get the wind effect, right? So I don't know if this is the standard wind effect you get from Unity, but if it is, props to them for playing around with the values, because that looks really gorgeous. If it's not, I would love for them to actually share this resource with us, because it looks gorgeous once again. All right, just a short stop here. The sound, once again, the sound is very important for making it real. And in this story, you can pretty much just hear two protagonists or two characters in general talking to each other in the background. And in real time, like in visually, what you see and what you interpret is pretty much just the character, I believe one of the protagonists, just walking around in a dense forest and soon meeting up with a creature, spoiler alert. The fact that they implemented so much focus into sound is, I believe, what made this 50% more real than what it would have been without all the sound effects. Because you can not only hear the footprints and all that from the character, obviously she's walking in a forest, so you hear all the grass crackling, but you can also hear the background noise of wood crackling. And you get the feeling that they're in a forest and this is not an open field because there's wood crackling. And they also implement some background noise from the characters themselves talking to each other, and now you just hear like tea, some liquid, I believe it's tea, some liquid at least. Making something visually real is not only about the visual interpretation, it's also about the audio. If you realize, maybe like for example Firewatch, the game looked and felt amazingly real because the dialogues between the two protagonists was actually what really made that game look real and feel real, because the game is low poly, but the audio makes it feel and just sound real. It sounds like two people just casually talking to each other, and the same thing goes here.
Tell me more about this place.
Okay, so the post-processing here, guys, it's magnificent. Huge props to Unity once again. Whenever I watch like a speed level design on YouTube from other people who link it to me, etc., I watch it and they go good, like they start good, and then they start adding the post-processing. They add sunshafts, they add bloom, and I'm like, all right, it's cool. They add ambient occlusion, etc. And I'm like, yeah, sure, go with it, like run with it. But then they start increasing the intensity until it literally hurts your eyes, and it's like, are you gonna stop or like? And this is something that is very inspirational by Unity's side, because you can see that the post-processing has been focused on. Obviously, they have played around with the intensity, but they don't have it too much. They still have it. Like you can obviously see that there is sunshafts. You can obviously see that there is ambient occlusion. You can obviously see that there is bloom, but it's not too much. It's not literally sticking right into your eyes and hurting your eyes. It's just there for you to interpret it. Some indie developers that don't really have that much kind of experience in the field, they usually just add a lot of bloom and makes it not look realistic in terms of photorealistic, but it looks just kind of gloomy and kind of like plastic-ish, because everything is just ending up shining then. This just looks photorealistic because you see the sunshaft, you interpret the fact that you acknowledge the fact that there is some sunshafts and all these post-processing, but it's not all over the place. Like it's just in one single area. It's like I'm here and you just look around in the scene.
You spent nearly 90 years there.
What? No, not there. The forest is just the lobby. That's where the entrance is. I've been thinking, how do I remember all this? When did I make these memories? You need a brain to make memories.
So, some people actually suggest me to comment on the density of the forest too. And of course, when you're making a dense forest for your game, level design, etc., it's obviously important to focus on optimization first and foremost to make sure that it runs as smoothly and as performance rich as possible, because if you have some realistic wind effect in your game, you probably want to aim for that 60 fps so that it doesn't really make it look stuttery in the scene itself, like when the player is actually inside of the scene. So make sure that it's as smooth as possible. But speaking of which, the wind effect in this shot, you can clearly see that it's not just the branches and just the leaves of the trees shaking, right? It's actually the tree itself shaking, and it makes it look like there's a chain reaction, which naturally speaking, clearly naturally speaking, there is a natural chain reaction when the wind strikes a tree. Obviously, if you visit a forest, you're gonna see that very clearly and very obviously. But when you enter a indie game that is made in Unity, you obviously you often don't see that. So it's making it look like and feel a little bit less realistic. But when you see this shot and you see the motion on the trees and the tree itself shaking a little bit from the wind, that's when it really hits you and you're like, all right, I'm unsure now if this is actually a real forest I'm taking a look at. And I also want to get into the density a little bit. You can see that the trees are very dense, but something that adds to the density is the fact that they have a lot of different grass textures. They're not just using one single grass texture, just like most level designs out there use, which I get really triggered onto, because when you're making a level design that is supposed to look real, you can't just use one grass texture or 5 grass textures with the same height, with the same width. You have to play around with the values a little bit. You have to make it look unique and feel unique, and this is where it feels unique and looks unique, because you can see, like here, you have different height and width of the grasses. It's kind of just like spreading around this area. It's a little bit like one or a couple of textures here, but then you get up a little bit higher and you see that we have some bushes, like very, very small bushes, and they blend in with the colors in terms of colors with the trees in the background. And that makes it look much more real because it doesn't really stick out in your eyes. And speaking of color, I also see a lot of indie devs making this type of grass, but it looks so green. Like, it's so green and so vibrant that it just hurts your eyes. And you look at the trees in the background on these type of levels, and they're like completely dark green, right? Like a regular tree would be. And then you look at the grass, you're like, what happened there? Like, there's no shadow, there's no ambient occlusion, there's no shadow in between the grasses. Like, what's going on there? It's just so vibrant. And this is what I call realism, because when you make it look this kind of dark, and make it fit and blend in with the trees in the background, even though there is a fog effect, etc., it makes it look much more real than regular scenes would.
Your brain is now remembering things that never happened to you, or to it. An enormous amount of neuron connections were formed since you came back. Decades worth of memory.
A better shot of the pebbles here, and also the focused object here, which is in the middle of the scene here. You can see that there is a huge, vast amount of chromatic aberration here in this scene, and I usually dislike that kind of effect, but by adding vignette and by adding blur effect to the edges of the scene, they really made it look real. And I gotta give some props to this man who actually added the post-processing here. It looks gorgeous. And also, once again, you can see the pebbles sticking up from the ground, and this looks like, by the looks of it, it looks dense. And that's what I like about Unity's level designing, because it's not just like, hey, this is a dense forest, we're gonna fill it up with a bunch of different models and all that. It's different. Like, you have different types of pebbles here. You have a random game object sticking up. It looks like a barrel or like a bucket. You don't know what it is. And then on it, you also have some pebbles. Then on it, you have some grass. And here, you just keep on going with the terrain. And then you have the focus main object here and a few bushes here in between, or beside the camera. And the main point here is the fact that they have used so much chromatic aberration that they kind of cut off the focus from this area of the map, which might seem obvious, but psychologically it's really taking your focus and putting it here. And by focusing a lot more onto making this part of the level real, they actually win by that situation, because you're just going to look here. Because if you look here, you're not going to see anything. So by putting a random game object here, by putting some higher textures here and putting some pebbles that are going to stick up from the ground and make it look real, and also these small branches, like really thin branches in between the rocks, the pebbles, the game object here. It just makes it look real, and it makes it feel real.
And there's one more thing you need to do.
Hey. Karen,
Yeah, sorry.
are you alright?
Yes, I'm just tired.
Tell me.
So the mix and the blend of the audio effect and the visual effect. So if you look visually speaking, you can see the trees like just shaking a little bit with a slightly wind effect, right? But when you listen to the sound, it's also very slow. And this is actually something that a lot of indie games miss out on, because most games that I played so far, they have like a crackling sound. If you're in the forest, they have like a crackling sound from the right side or the left side, and maybe even all directions possible, right? But they don't fit with the visuals. I realized that so obviously. And then it really ends up not being real because it doesn't feel real. Maybe you have the most amazing textures out there. Maybe you're using the best assets out there for 3D models, or you created your own ones. It doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, if the scene doesn't feel real, audio visually speaking, then there is a problem.
You see any of the others?
Yes.
Here, once again, the sound implementation to the scene. She's walking slowly. I believe it's a she walking right now. Don't get triggered. But she's walking slowly through these branches, through these grasses, and through this dense forest in the general. And you hear the sound effects being very slow as well, and a little bit like high pitched to make sure that it suits and fits with the level you're actually seeing and interpreting, visually speaking.
I damn near fainted. Even though he had told me about them.
You think that was one of them?
I know.
Alright, this is gonna give me nightmares. We stopped at the perfect point too. Well, you can see, I'm not really gonna have to comment too much on the character. It just looks so much interesting. But the first thing I see when I look from a level designer's perspective, when I look at the character, is the fact that it's very bumpy. Like, not only the nose, the eyes and all that, like the obvious parts, but literally the chin, the shoulders, the body. You can obviously see that there is a huge hole in his body. And the reason it looks real is not because it looks quite awesome and quite scary and all that, and there's like liquid falling down. By the way, I actually wonder how they made this. But it's making it look real and feel real because of all these cracks of trees and branches in between the nose, here, you know, on the chin and all that, here, on the jaw and etc. I mean, literally everywhere, on the arms. Even though it's blurred out, you can still see quite clearly that it's quite there, like it's actually existing, and there are cracks on this body. And also, something that I realized, the liquid has obviously dripped all across this crack of his skull, I guess I could say. But you can also see that it's some parts of the liquid is actually dry. Like if you look at the tip of his nose, or not the tip of his nose, the top of his nose, at least until the end of his crack, you can see that it's quite dry. And then you get down a little bit and it's kind of like slimy, gluey, kind of liquid, like hanging around his chin. And also in the mouth, a little bit dry. And this is something that really, I mean, it might sound like I'm nitpicking quite a bit, but this is actually what you have to do when you're designing a level that is supposed to look real. If you're gonna have a character, you have to kind of focus on these type of things. If you have liquid in your game, which is a little bit slimy, which is a little bit like gluey, etc., like this one, you have to make sure that some parts are actually looking dry, and you have to play around a lot with the materials, the shaders, obviously the shaders a lot, and also the textures to make sure that it looks real, and also mix it up a little bit because you can see that the dry parts have kind of blended in with the cracks on the nose. As you can see, it's very obvious to realize it from the nose. You can also see it under the eye, but Obviously, when you look at the crack, you can pretty much see a little bit of liquid like hanging around here, but it's dry. It's not going to like fall down completely. It's just inside of the crack, and that's what makes it real, because it makes it look bumpy. Here, did you guys see that? The entire platform falling and all that, it looks real, obviously. I'm gonna give the props. But what really catches my eye is the fact that this is like a little bit of dust, and then you have some really tiny small pebbles here, right? And you saw that the pebbles were moving around and jumping and bumping and then falling down, because when the character, you know, trampled on it, because obviously the entire platform falls down, or not falls down, but like moves downwards. And you can see this part shaking around because it's kind of in the air, like levitating, or kind of like floating, because of this part is kind of hanging from this. It almost looks like a joint, right? And not that kind of joint. I know what you guys are thinking, but I'm like hinging, right? And you like, mostly the pebbles are what actually catches my eyes here, because they really do have that kind of realistic motion when the character tramples down this platform that she's walking on.
You're almost there.
You're the only one who woke up, Karen. One out of tens of thousands. Why?
Alright, there it is, boys. That's pretty much the end of it. First impressions, I really loved it. I was scared, especially from the last shot, because like, first, I love how they played around with the feeling they give you. Like, first, when you saw that kind of tree creature or tree man or whatever it is, you were scared because it just turned around after scratching on a tree. It looks creepy, it sounds creepy. The sound, once again, it sounds creepy and gives you the feeling of it being very creepy and eerie and scary, really. I kind of felt like the character was gonna die, but anyway. And then you entered this scene where he's like, these are the only ones that woke up, and you're like, that doesn't really look that scary. Like, it doesn't look that creepy anymore. They just look like kind of victims. And they play around with the cinematography, I guess it's called, which makes it look and feel that way. Once again, it's not only about the looks, and it's not only about the sound and audio and all that. It's not only about the visuals, post-processing, graphics. It's about the feeling. What kind of feeling are you giving your viewers? What kind of feeling are you giving your players, the people that are watching your content, the people that are playing your game? What is the feeling there? What are they supposed to feel like, and what do they feel like right now while playing? And that's the important part. And that's pretty much it, guys. That was kind of my reaction to it, and also a little review and tips and tricks, I guess, for level designing, depending on how you want to design your levels. Let us know in the comments. Obviously, one important thing in this community and on this channel, on this YouTube channel, is that I always ask you guys what you think and what you feel about certain things. After talking about feeling so much, I don't even want to say what do you feel. But yeah, and let us know in the comments down below. Also, we're running a giveaway right now on the YouTube channel, or in the community. I don't know why I said YouTube channel. So join Discord if you want to join the giveaway. The link will be in the pinned comment and also in the description down below. And once again, huge props to Unity for making this amazing trailer slash cinematic trailer, kind of, aka movie. It looks awesome. Adam was amazing, and this is just an upgraded version, I feel like, and it's just glorious. Yeah, with that being said, thank you so much for suggesting this video to me, everyone. If you have any other videos, if you enjoyed this reaction, by the way, let me know in the comments, and I'll make more of these. And if you have any other reaction kind of content you would like me to make, let me know. I'm all ears for feedback. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, make sure to hit the subscribe button, and also drop a like if you enjoyed the video. It really supports me a lot. Leave a comment once again, join the giveaway, and I will catch you either in the comments or in the Discord server. See you guys. Bye bye.
Could have been that I can tell.